Fucking A.
Here we go. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Hi, Annie. And good morning. This is a really exciting panel, and we got a cast of thousands here. Let me introduce folks, and then we'll get started in our discussion, kind of part two about high dynamic range in cinema, to some exciting stuff about visual effects, and then, of course, live action. So joining me here on the panel, to my right, we have Ben Rosenblatt, who may be known to many of you, who's one of the co-producers of Star Wars, and he's from Bad Robot. Next to Ben, we have Thaddeus Beyer, who is with Dolby, and he's director of image platforms. Next to Thad, we have Stefan Nakamura, who's from Company 3 and Digital Intermediate Colors on Tomorrowland and a number of other movies. Mr. Rick Sayer from Pixar, who is the self-proclaimed and has a job title of Devil's Advocate. And next to Rick is Jay Schulte from ILM. He is an R&D engineer and the image pipeline supervisor. And then rounding out the panel is independent visual effects supervisor for Jungle Book, Mr. Rob Legata. Please join me in welcoming all our panelists. So this is a panel about HDR in cinema, so I thought I'd start off by asking, what are you guys all doing here? So what are your claim to fame with HDR? Ben?
Hello. Oh, good morning. So I'm the least qualified of everyone here, as far as I can tell. With you know, for me, HDR began with a high school childhood friend of J.J. Abrams, this guy Mike Rockwell, who used to work at Dolby and now works at Apple. And he got in touch with J.J., who put him in touch with me and said, "Hey, we're working on this secret stuff. You got to come see it." And I, went to some warehouse in San Francisco and saw this amazing, projector, and started to, explain what the long-term plan was. Cut to a test we did on Star Trek. Saw these amazing star fields, and it was stunning. And then finally on Star Wars, when we had sort of talked about doing an HDR version of the movie in Dolby Vision, and we finally put up a trailer, and I was there at Company 3 with Stefan Sonnenfeld and JJ, and we were just, we were dead tired from working on the movie trailer simultaneously, just floored when we saw the amazing, Dolby Vision HDR, EDR version. So it's almost my entire history.
Okay, that's pretty good. Thaddeus?
So I was doing computer graphics and visual effects for 30 years. 4 years ago, Dolby asked me to come in and help work with high dynamic range for content creation. And I've been helping all the studios and colorists and post facilities to do high dynamic range post-production, and it's going really, really well. We've got like 25 movies in the last year in our theaters, in high dynamic range. It's going really well. So helping educate and get stuff working is really good.
Stefan?
Well, the reason I'm here is because I'm the digital intermediate colorist to finish all the movies that all these guys work on. So I did the first transfer for Fox, Exodus, Gods and Kings with Ridley, and also for Disney, Tomorrowland. We all worked on the first 4K HDR for Disney on Tomorrowland. So since then I've done several other movies. And
Rick?
So back in the 80s, believe it or not, the Pixar image computer had a frame buffer that had numbers that went greater than 1. And so that, that notion of extended or high dynamic range was kind of intrinsic and kind of in my blood growing up with this stuff. So I was involved in pipelines for that, even applying that to films early on with a computer paint system that was used on a number of films. And trying to integrate some of these more photographic ideas into computer animation pipelines, which I've done on a number of films. And then I got tangled up with this. I've been tracking high dynamic range display technology, and there was a line in the Tomorrowland script that implied that we needed to show the audience something something that they had never seen before, like everybody always says, but that maybe there was a way to do that in exhibition. And the timing was such that there actually was a way to do that in exhibition. And so here we are.
Jay?
So, over at ILM, we've been HDR pretty much from day one, I believe. So, the pipeline is and breathes and exists because of HDR going forward. Everything we do, touch or render is HDR by nature. So, that's my intro for it, especially being the pipeline supervisor, making sure all the spaces are the way they should. And then from the exhibition side, we're blessed to work with a lot of people on these couches on the first theatrical release of HDR tomorrow. So, that's kind of what I take it.
Rob?
Yeah, my first one was I did a little test for Airflex when everybody's talking about high dynamic range and higher frame rate. So I shot one at 24 side by side with one that was shot 48 frames a second or 60 frames a second and displayed it on two monitors. One is a regular monitor, one is an HDR monitor. And what everybody responded to was the, not necessarily the higher frame rate, but the clarity and the black level on the range that was on the HDR. So I became interested in that. And then I didn't really have an opportunity until we did Jungle Book, where we now was able, I think, are we the second one to come out in HDR, or is it after Tomorrowland, or is it more?
We had a Star Wars movie.
Oh, Star Wars.
There was a movie or two in between.
Oh, Star Wars, I'm not familiar.
Small. No big deal.
And when is that already come out?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know at this point. I think.
So Jungle Book became the thing, and when, as soon as we saw it, it was like, well, we have to show the movie in that, and especially in 3D, it was just unreal. What I said before yesterday is the screen, when it's that black, just disappears, and now you're just looking through a big giant portal. And in our movie, because we took advantage of stuff that was in the audience, like dust and bees and flowers and whatever, you just felt like you were in the room. It just wasn't a very transporting experience, and not the same in regular, dynamic range or regular projection. So it was a little tough to go back from seeing HDR and then doing a regular release. It was a little difficult, sad, I thought.
Yeah, it seems to spoil all of us once you've seen it,
Yeah.
How many of you were there yesterday at the pre-screenings? We did show the movie that Ben worked on yesterday afternoon, Star Wars. Yeah, okay, thanks. And then Inside Out, which you just talked about in the earlier panel, Zootopia, Jungle Book, which Rob is going to talk about. And Rob unfortunately has to leave at 11, so we're going to kind of give him a little bit.
Actually, it's probably fortunate.
Hey, please cover aspect ratio because Vittorio Corrado's Univision 2.0 aspect ratio is the ideal for a Dolby Vision movie theater or a 77-inch OLED. CinemaScope feels like a kick in the nuts, quite frankly. It's a wasted real space.
Is this the kind of panel this is going to be?
Well, thank you for that.
This is great.
We did not do a kick in the nuts release for Jungle Book. We decided to go with the Storaro approved 1.9. We just went to 1.9 just to be different.
Oh, good.
Okay, save your question for the...
I think it was more of a statement than a question, I think.
I have no idea.
Okay, so I guess we probably don't need to cover too much about what is HDR. That was sort of one of the lead-in questions we had. We decided everyone should kind of understand what the benefits are. But just to summarize, I drew the short straw. I tend to think of HDR as the part about making every pixel better. Brighter whites, blacker blacks, brighter colors, and indeed, everyone hopefully understands the notion of the color volume, which is the color palette that the creators have, and all the possible intensities or allowable intensities. That's the palette in which a creative tells their story. And the benefit of HDR is we make that palette much, much bigger, and they can do much more exciting things, like the blacker blacks that Rob talked about, the brighter highlights, and today, the state-of-the-art in cinema with the Dolby Vision projectors, we've doubled the peak brightness to 180 nits. We are trying to get everyone to move away from foot lamberts. Anyone still using foot lamberts in the audience?
Yes, we are.
No, put your hands down. Nits, foot lamberts are equivalent. 48 nits is 14 foot lamberts, so we're trying to get everyone to have a common lexicon across industries. But that's the main benefit of HDR, and in this panel we're going to talk about how that, how do we actually bring those benefits to the market. I think Thad mentioned there have been a few other movies after Tomorrowland and before Star Wars, about 25. Most recent one that I happened to see was The Revenant in high dynamic range, and as depressing as that movie is, you get sucked right into it because of the inky blacks and the bright scenes. So let's kind of jump right into it, because this panel is about visual effects in live. And, you know, we have a workflow today that serves us well. How hard is it to add HDR to that existing workflow? Jay, you want to kick that one off?
You know, I mean, for us in visual effects, we're so beholden to getting the data right from the beginning that if you've done the numbers and you're doing the processes correct, HDR comes for free because it's HDR by the very nature of what you're doing. So making sure you get your scene linear product off of that camera, making sure you're very aware of what all the sources are and how you combine them into whatever working world you're in. To all the practices that all the artists apply, making sure that compositing happens with education as well of what compositors should and should not do. You know, in the past we've been able to get away with a lot of it because of the tone mount curves that we work with, right? A lot of the LUTs that people put on the show, they don't quite show you what's really there. HDR is an eye opener for visual effects because it is the ultimate Batman cable detector. Because anything that isn't done correctly will show up in HDR. Now that's not a threat or anything to be scared by because it'll make your product better. Your shots will look more realistic. Everything feels like it lives in the same world because now, for instance, you can match the specular of your robot or of your spaceship against something that's physical in the plane because guess what? That's how bright it is when we shot it. I can see all that highlight detail. I can see all that low-end detail and texture. Make my stuff match that. So.
Pat?
Yeah, so as Jay said, that people have been doing visual effects at high dynamic range for many, many years. Things like Nuke allow people to step up and step down the brightness. That's how visual effects artists see it on their desk. But there's some things like, say, matte painting, where you really want to have a high dynamic range display to paint. The artist can only really see what he's painting if it is there in high dynamic range. And doing reviews in high dynamic range, so people come in and see what they looks like in high dynamic range. And then go back to their desk and say, okay, that's what it looks like. So it isn't a huge challenge yet. The pipeline is all there, but it is helpful to see it in high dynamic range.
I have a couple of thoughts there because I've seen some of the struggles on the other side in some parts of computer animation and particularly motion graphics where I think HDR, one of the things that's exciting about it in exhibition and display technology is that it can get us to a post 1.0 world. We used to joke about certain companies, nobody was brighter than paper. And if you think about scene exposures, like a photographer, if you pin something on middle gray and then you're talking about stops up and down, this, as Jay said, it comes for free. But if you're thinking of this as a painting that goes 0 to 1, and now suddenly I can see values above 1, well, if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. You know, there's a lot of things that have lined up in the zeitgeist that make this easier now. Physically based rendering, image-based lighting, and HDR, which came for visual effects first. Those all make this, you know, much more straightforward. And you can see now, even in video games, that there is extended dynamic range that's already there. It's available. It's in the shaders. It's in the renders. But not all pipelines work that way, and some pipelines are still stuck in the fact that a highlight might be 1.0 and it might even be composited over something because, you know, contrast ratios and compositing can get conflated. So if there's a 1.0 anywhere in your compositing scripts, I'm looking at you screen, then you're going to have problems.
So is it easier or harder than 4K?
Easier, but I mean, it's more expensive. It's almost biased. What is that? It's more expensive.
4 times the amount of data.
4K is.
4K means 4X?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. 4 times.
There's some fixed cost. It's some multiplicative function with 4K. There's more pixels. They got to come from somewhere. Those pixels aren't going to make themselves. The high dynamic range pixels, if you have care all the way through your pipeline, it's just preserving them and not scraping them against the ceiling.
But you could have a high dynamic range of 2K. You could have it in any format. That's different than the pixel count.
I'll chime in a little bit just for like a layman's terms for what Rick is saying on a real practical level. So basically what he's saying is, on the typical monitors that we have now, which is like a 30-foot Lamberts, like your regular TV sets, so when they're designing things, they're designing like a cloud, and a cloud hits the 30-foot Lambert, as bright as it can get, and then a designer designs a sun, he can only hit this level of brightness, right? So the sun and the clouds end up being the same. But then when you get to HDR, the clouds end up here, and there's all this room here. So if they don't design the sun to be brighter, then the sun ends up being clipped right at the cloud level, and it looks like there's like a clip picture. So that's what he's talking about one, that now when they have to design things, they have to keep in mind that there's a greater dynamic range, so it's not stuck at this level, that they have all of this room to play with, and so they have to design for this, even though we're going to protect for this, but they have to protect for all of this.
And over the years of film and then new digital cameras, they have a greater stop range than we're allowed to actually show, and HDR now allows us to show it, so it really does kind of come for free. It's really the limitation of the display. But when we do things to try to imitate real life and make it photographic, we want all those different levels. We want the clouds to be at one level and then the sun to be there. So if we wanted to actually expose for the sun, we could get detail in there and leave the clouds, and they would behave naturally. So it actually does come for free. It just gives you the chance to do it. But what I appreciate about it when I was doing Jungle Book is the nice gradient, the nice sort of soft shoulder it has and knee it has to come out of black, and you get to see every little bit of it, and it's just a beautiful thing. And if you're a cameraman in particular and you shoot a night scene with a preponderance of black, really on the screen it's never black. It'll just be the gray of the screen on a conventional scene, so it looks milky and crappy looking. But when you hit zero black and you get a nice little detail above that, all your night scenes look spectacular, almost like what your eye sees.
Can I ask a Jungle Book question?
Sure.
So, I mean, just because it's the most recent example released, obviously, this weekend, right?
Mhm.
It's a plug.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Everybody should
Go
see
see
it.
it.
I'm excited to see it, but did you guys do your sort of primary digital intermediate pass in some HDR format, or was it sort of?
We did our main one is actually the majority of the theaters are going to project it in 14-foot Lamberts, which is the 2D version. And then
48 nits.
What's that?
48 nits.
I thought nits was something you used
We're
to
gonna
have in
hold
your
strong.
hair.
We're gonna hold strong in the
Wasn't nits something you used
What
to
he
have in your
means
hair
to
and
say
you
is
had to comb
$10 per
together?
square meter.
By the way, ISO does not recognize foot Lamberts anymore, so you guys are living in the
And who are
last
they?
century, you foot Lambert.
Okay.
Neanderthal.
I'm so dated, I'm so 10 minutes ago, I guess. The question, no, we did it for 14, that was our base, and everything above and below that was now an alteration, so we said that that's what our film wants to look like. And then for us in HDR, because in 3D, it was at 14-foot Lamberts, because we lost the star, that was the glasses, so that was our standard, and then everything else was derivative of that.
So we did it the same way on Star Wars, but I bring it up because the, all the talk about the visual effects pipeline, which is obviously important visual, to Rick's point about making sure it's sort of preserved throughout, I think it's important not to lose sight of the finishing side of that. And sort of just like with immersive audio, when Dolby Atmos came on the scene, it was almost universally done as sort of a separate pass after you finish the main mix. You'd go and you do your Atmos pass, and then in a pretty short period of time, it reversed, and it became, okay, now the Atmos, the more, the format with more potential became the primary path, and then, you down mix to the other formats. I think that's going to be an important component, and not a very difficult one, but sort of a leap for filmmakers to make with HDR, to make, that HDR pass the primary pass, and then go to the other formats, because what we noticed on Star Wars, for example, is we did our primary pass, our 14-foot length.
The 48
And our DCI pass, and then we went to our pass on the Dolby projectors, and it looked amazing instantly. But then there were certain shots. Roger, our visual effects supervisor, would see, and we'd go, okay, well now we've got to go adjust the shots, and it came this game of cat and mouse. Whereas if you went with the sort of the higher dynamic range pass first, you'd be addressing those on the first pass, and they wouldn't be a problem later on because you're just going more limited.
We ended up protecting it for that because we were able to view it in high dynamic range and make sure that it was like a negative.
As you were finally going the effects, or
Yeah, as we were doing them, we did it kind of early on because we knew we were going to do this. Is that we made it so just like a photograph. If you shot it with a real camera, it would have this dynamic range, and as long as you kept faithful to that, you could go anywhere you want with it and not go, oh shit, I need to really change something because now I'm seeing my sins. You know, we protected for the sins beforehand.
But I assume not you've done it both. Have you done it both ways, where the HDR pass is the main?
No.
No.
The reality is that the reason why we start off, like all of us started with the 14-foot Lambert, the cinema B3 rate first is because 99.9% of the theaters are going to show that. So everyone in the production side that we're working with as a finisher for movies, coloring the movies, and we're having to work with visual effects pretty much on a daily basis to make sure it fits into the movie properly. So everyone has to have that same type of monitoring. So everyone's on a regular TV set that is at 30-foot Lamberts. Everyone kind of works that way. The projection's at 14-foot Lamberts. So all the sign-offs and all the creative comments that the directors are made for us are coming off of that type of light level. Now, when we get to a much, much brighter light level, different decisions can get made, but then no one is seeing that all through the pipeline. So if we craft the movie where 99.9% of the people are seeing and making sure that when it hits the theater, that what they're crafting in the theater, in our theater, is going to get out to the audience and everyone sees it that way. That's the reason why we do it that way. There's a theoretical or hypothetical reason why we would do it the other way, but for practical sense, we still will grade everything in the exhibition light level that everyone is seeing at, because that's just, we find through things so minutely that it has to be done that way, because when you get from a much, much brighter to much, much lower, you're still gonna have to massage things a lot. And when things get down to finding a big movie with a lot of visual effects, I mean, a lot of times we're getting hundreds of visual effects coming in on a kind of daily, weekly basis, and at the very end, and we're all
Compromise.
midnight oil, and we have to make sure that what people see is what we're doing in the bay, and that's the reason why we have that workflow for now.
I understand, you guys understand. We did a short film recently where we graded first on our projector, then mapped it down to 48 nits, to 40-foot Lamberts, showed it to the director and asked if she wanted to make any changes. She said no. She said it was perfect. So it can be done. And we're grading the film right now, a full-length, high-end film, first on our projector. We're going to map it down. And so far, the colorist, at least, is very excited by this process. We'll see how it works, and there could be issues, and it could be that we'll make blacks that look great on our projector and don't work on DCI characters as well, but I think it's got to work.
I think we change it though, artistically, having a different medium to play with. It's never like a one-size-fits-all. I've never found that to be. So, because we might be able to take advantage of something or something doesn't look quite as good.
Well, so this before we came up, this was a heated topic in the panel because to Ben's point, we always say master in the largest color volume available. I think everyone in the panel agrees with that. And then the honest point of debate becomes, well, if my deliverable is not in that quality for the market that makes me money, that I think was Stefan's point, I really got to make sure that one works. But from a artistic perspective, and I got yelled at for bringing up the other C, the consumer market, what's happening today is HDR content does get mastered in the largest color volume, and then because we have a variety of displays from TV sets to iPhones to tablets that all have different display color volumes, what happens is, to preserve artistic intent, it gets mapped down. And the reasonable question is, why can't we do the same thing for cinema? And I think Stefan argued the point, well, because, the majority of content today goes out at 48 nits, or 14-foot Lamberts, for DCI, and that's where the money comes from. Even though I think many of the panelists agree that the HDR grade is often the best looking one. So why can't we preserve that artistic intent down to the DCI grade, guys?
Well, I think, as Rob said, there's not an automatic solution, at least not for everybody. It may be appropriate for some films, but not for all. But I think right now it really comes down to a matter of scheduling and timing, and we'll see probably a shift as we did with film. I mean, at Pixar, we used to choose the film grade as the master grade, the golden reference, and then we would do a trim pass for digital cinema, back when digital cinema was the minority. And for a while, this was a directorial choice. What's your golden master? But at a certain point, digital cinema became dominant, and so it was quite easy to say, okay, that's the master reference, and then we'll also do a trim pass for film. At the moment, if you're in a hurry, then you're going to do the version that most people are going to be paying for and most people are going to be seeing first.
And, there's another component to this whole thing. The regular D-Cinema is, when you're seeing a projector off of these xenon bulbs, and the Dolby Vision, and we're talking about, is coming off of laser. And the pictures do look different because of the light that it's coming off of. So with the laser, there's this thing called metameric failure that people see blues differently. So even though that doesn't sound like it's a big deal, the directors, a lot of directors that we work with, cinematographers, are very magenta phobic. They hate pink, they hate magenta, and when you're grading to the laser, and it tends to go, it feels a little bit bluer, there's a different creative choice that gets made, as opposed to the P3 version. So this is why we talk about, it's not wrong, it's just that we match it to the P3 because the light that everyone is seeing coming off of a xenon bulb, and they see things that way. When you grade to a 31.5 foot Lambert, in that term, Dolby Vision, and then you come back down to 14 with a different light level, with a different light engine, where the colors cannot get represented the same way, then the different choices get made. So in the essence of time, I think what we're doing right now is we're mastering all in P3, making sure everyone is happy, make sure there's no magenta.
So everybody, remember this moment, right? And whatever the version of this panel is next year, which I'm sure I won't be at,
Be careful.
I promise you, we're going to be talking about how, we're doing the HDR grades first.
Yeah.
I promise you, because this is how it happened in audio. I can tell you there was, I don't know the numbers, but I can tell you anecdotally that there is definitely not more, immersive sound theaters, Atmos theaters out there than there are 7.1 and 5.1 theaters. That really didn't need to be a factor in order to drive the change. It were the filmmakers that drove the change and enjoy, experiencing like the best quality format. I think it's a much more of a technological hurdle, and not the point you made earlier about needing to keep everyone on the same page and seeing the same image. I think that's the hurdle if the technology can get out there. So there are more laser projectors in visual effects houses, or whether they're pulsar monitors or some version of that, so that people can see the same thing. I think you're going to see big movies.
Yeah, I have to leave in a second anyway. But I think that it'll start to become that the HDR version is going to be the version, because it's the one that looks like what you want it to look like.
Exactly.
And then everything else is going to be derivative of that. And this, for us, this project was so new, and HDR was so new that we went first because we didn't even know if we could get the projectors and all the stuff and be able to master it that easily. So we ended up with the 14-foot Lambert one, but when we saw the laser version, it was like that. We want it to look like that. And I think if you do the same thing with Atmos, is we want it to sound like that. Now you have to make it sound that way on 7.1 and then 5.1 and then...
And wide color gamut is awesome, so you need to do a shakeup of your colorist department.
Can we get
Yeah,
a word on him, please?
We're going to work on it. In fact, I'm going to leave right now and get on that. Like you said.
Anyway,
Probably got
Rob's gotta go.
Come on.
Thanks, Rob.
But it's funny because what Rob was saying, what we're all talking about here. Oh yes. It actually comes back to your original question, I think, which was a while ago now, but it was how easy is it to add HDR to your film, and I think there are probably two questions that need to be asked. One is that one. The other is how easy is it to add really good, nuanced, considered HDR to your film, which is to say, not just sort of turning on the HDR button and doing a trim pass, but actually putting it through the entire pipeline and making your choices based on seeing it that way, right?
Yeah.
And that's big. That's big.
Well, and to continue this thread, because it was an interesting topic, hopefully for the audience as well. Why can't you? Everyone seems to agree artistically the HDR grade usually is the one you like the best, and I think, Rick, you agree with that. But the directors, when they see that, then get spoiled and don't want to do the one that makes the money. But why can't we get to the point where we do that as the creative pass, and then do that QC pass for the stuff? You still got to make sure that product looks good. What's preventing us? Because actually Ben and I are on the same page in this one. I think that's the way we're going to migrate eventually.
I think it's just a question of pipeline speed and efficiency. Everything needs to be perfect and battle tested and always working and ready to go, and then we can make that switch.
And we need displays. You need something to look at so that you can inform those decisions, so people don't feel like they're seeing something for the first time and are amazed by it. That's a great characteristic to have, but if Roger, JJ, and all the creators in Star Wars are looking at those explosions for the first time at that brightness, it's an amazing experience. But there's also creative choices that could have been made earlier in the process had that display technology been there to educate people on what this thing is going to look like.
By the way, just because you mentioned explosion, so we just recently finally did our home video HDR pass on the Dolby monitor at Company 3, and a lot of times JJ doesn't go in to look at that stuff. In this case, we had Roger go in and Dan Mandel, who's the DP, and Dan, God bless him, got completely freaked out. He was really genuinely concerned. And he said, he called me up and he called Sonnenfeld up and he called Roger up and said, I think we have a problem here. And was really worried about it. And Roger went in and he said, okay, I think Dan's just afraid of the future here. And so, but I told JJ you should go in and look at it because I don't want to be wrong. And he did, and the truth is, you saw these explosions and they went brighter than anything we'd ever seen on any point, at any point in the film, maybe in real life. And JJ loved it. He was just like, this big smile on his face. He was like, this is amazing, this is amazing, amazing. But it was a complete unknown. We just never seen it before. So all Dan saw, he was trying to do the best he could. He just saw it and he was like, this is
What is this? Where's this stuff coming from?
Exactly. And so, that hardware sort of hurdle is huge to overcome because you need to be able to see that throughout the process to not have this sort of outcome.
And from our side in visual effects, having HDR display technology at the start of it, when people start creating the models, they start painting the textures, informs a much richer palette for what those characters look like when we push them through the pipeline. I mean, it will really show up that a TIE fighter has more specular or better metal detail because we were able to paint those textures and look at them in HDR from the start.
So another issue, we are, like I said, this week we started grading the film first in high dynamic range and our projector. One of the surprising things was, we looked at the various clips and said, we have to rescan this. We have to rescan that because it was not scanned, it clipped. We wouldn't have seen that in SDR. And if we then did the HDR grade, there's no way they would let us go rescan that footage because they've already scanned it once. So it is better for understanding all the detail, all the flaws in the content, doing it in HDR first.
Well, and certainly, hold on, I comment on that. Certainly in our experience, if you've lost it in the master, no amount of stretching is going to bring it back.